The house I purchased was astonishingly transferred to my sister by my parents. As soon as I stopped paying the mortgage, the house was sold. Now, I am in complete shock and utterly speechless. At 28 years old, I am currently repaying the mortgage on a house I bought from my parents. I later learned that my parents had gifted the house to my sister. It's surprising that they went so far for my 25-year-old sister, but what hurts most is that they never told me about it. I had always sensed that my parents loved my sister more than me, but I never imagined it was to this extent. My parents had an incredibly deep affection for my sister, yet sadly, they did nothing for me, their eldest daughter. They always demanded so much from me. From a young age, I was taught responsibility, while my sister, Sally, was treated like a princess. She wasn't actually a princess, but my parents made her feel like one. Even though they weren't wealthy, Sally had the freedom to do whatever she wanted. My parents never placed any academic expectations on Sally. While I focused on my studies, she had the freedom to pursue her passions and hobbies. That was always the norm. My parents made their expectations of me clear and emphasized that I should build a solid career. After graduating high school, I couldn't afford to slack off on my studies. My parents went into debt and dipped into their savings to ensure I could attend a technical school. Instead of using my own savings, I proposed that they co-sign an educational loan for me, with the plan to repay it once I started working. However, they opposed the idea, citing high interest rates that would cost 1.5 times the original amount. At the time, I wasn't mature enough to fully understand how loans worked. I believed it was for the best since my parents decided against it. Back then, I had just turned 18. I thought they were trying to protect me from financial strain, but I never imagined that it would later become a tool to exploit me. Immediately after graduating from college, I secured a stable job in the tech field. It was exactly what they wanted. They were proud of my success, but I always felt that they expected some return for the investment they had made in me. They constantly reminded me, never forget the sacrifices we made for you. Don't forget where you came from. At first, it seemed harmless. I thought they were trying to keep me grounded, but over time I realized it was emotional manipulation. They were experts at instilling guilt. After I started working, the pressure only increased. Every time I visited home, my father would relentlessly ask about my progress. I could never forget how he had spent his life savings on my education. I had to work hard to repay the enormous sacrifices my parents had made for me. I understood that they needed a new house. For years, they had been saving diligently, only to use those funds for my college education. It had been less than a year since I started working, and I was still new to my first job. When I returned home for the holidays, my father stared at me during dinner and said something that shook me. "We played our part in your education. Now it's your turn to make plans to buy us a house. We can't live on rent forever." Hearing those words made my stomach churn. I understood my parents wanted me to buy a house, but I didn't think it would happen so soon. I was barely a year into my career and still sharing an apartment with 2 other women. I couldn't afford to own a house on my own. Despite objections from financial institutions, my parents pushed me to purchase a house. "Dad, I've just started working. I can't even afford my own apartment. Why are you making such a huge financial demand all of a sudden?" I protested. After thinking for a moment, my father said, "We raised you to plan and work towards your goals." My mother, in a gentle yet firm voice, said, "Without us, you wouldn't have been able to go to college. You wouldn't be who you are today. I want you to repay that debt to us." I didn't have the courage to argue that they were wrong. I owe my current position to their sacrifices. However, there were times when I found their lectures unbearable and wanted to scream, "Who asked you to do all that for me?" But I never mustered the courage to confront them. I began to distance myself from my parents, only responding to their calls in emergencies and avoiding visiting them altogether. Since that day, I have used my busy job as an excuse to evade them. Yet, the obligation to buy a house for them always lingered in my mind. After 5 years of saving and hard work, I finally caved and purchased a house for them. It was a lovely, modest home in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't luxurious, but it was comfortable. Everything seemed to be going smoothly. I felt it was the least I could do to repay them. My parents had done so much for me, so I continued paying the mortgage for 3 years. I even made extra payments to avoid foreclosure. But I had other plans I wanted to achieve in life. I wanted my own home, to enjoy traveling, and to have a family. I couldn't continue paying the mortgage forever. After purchasing the house, my parents' constant nagging finally stopped. They proudly told relatives and friends about how their investment had paid off. I didn't pay much attention, but there was still a gap in our relationship. I continued to keep my distance from my family and rarely visited home. One day, after months of being swamped with work, I decided to visit home for the first time in a long while. I informed my parents that I was coming. I intended to surprise them, but an unexpected surprise awaited me instead. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed my sister Sally's car parked outside the house. I thought she might be visiting, and I was excited for a family reunion. It had been years since Sally got married and moved out. I hadn't seen her much since our parents were still renting their old place. The last time I saw her was at her wedding. When I knocked on the door, Sally answered. She was wearing pajamas, so I assumed she was staying for a short visit. We exchanged greetings and hugged. Then she asked, "Hey, what are you doing here?" I replied jokingly, "That's what I want to ask you." As I stepped inside, I asked her, "Where are Mom and Dad?" Sally casually replied from the couch, "Oh, they moved out." I was stunned. "Moved out? What do you mean?" "This is their house," I pressed her. Sally shrugged and said, "Oh, I guess they didn't tell you. Actually, they gave me this house. I live here now." Her words made the ground feel like it was shifting beneath me. The house I had been paying for all this time. She said it casually, as if it didn't carry any deeper meaning. "Mom and Dad said I needed the house more than you. I'm having a baby soon, you know." They had decided that Sally should have the house. In shock, I asked where our parents were living now. She replied, as if it were the most normal thing, that they were renting an apartment on the other side of town. I left without saying anything. My head was spinning with anger, and I drove straight to their new apartment. When my mother opened the door, I wasted no time yelling, "What is going on?" "Sally told me you gave her the house. The house I've been paying for. Explain yourself." My mother smiled at me as if it were no big deal. Now, calm down. Come inside first. I didn't think you'd care this much." I entered the house, but I didn't sit down. I was there for answers. "Why did you give away the house I bought for you without consulting me? Why did you think it wasn't important for me to know?" My mother sighed, as if I were being unreasonable. "Frankly, we've thought about this for a long time. You're successful, so you don't need to worry about yourself. Do you want Sally's kids to grow up in an unstable home? With a house of her own, she won't have to worry about rent and can focus on their happiness." Her words made me explode with anger. I don't care where my niece or nephew grows up. I see nothing wrong with them living in a rented home. We lived in rentals ourselves and we're fine. Moreover, their situation isn't my responsibility. It's something Sally and her husband should handle. If they want financial stability, they should find better jobs. Hearing the commotion, my father entered the room and said, "Why are you making such a fuss? Sally needs financial stability, and it's our duty to provide it. She didn't have the same opportunities as you. We didn't pay for her college education, so she deserves the house." I was in disbelief. "How can you say something so ridiculous?" I asked. "She didn't go to college, which is why you didn't have to pay for it in the first place, right? Don't forget, she dropped out of high school." They clearly didn't grasp the gravity of their actions. "You're already successful, you can just buy something else," they said. Sure, I can buy something else, but I've always emphasized, that's for me to say, not for you. Their words left me spinning. as if the world had turned upside down. I couldn't comprehend their logic and was utterly confused. In the end, I stormed out of their apartment, checked into a hotel, and have been relaxing ever since. I truly don't know how to move forward from here. I cannot back down like this. I have no intention of continuing to pay the mortgage after discovering the facts, but navigating this difficult situation is incredibly complex. I understand that my parents cannot afford the mortgage payments, but I am confident my sister can. This all happened on Friday. Today is Sunday. I have a flight booked for Tuesday to return home. Although I considered leaving immediately, after calming down I realized there is more I need to address here. I want to check the remaining mortgage balance. Since I had been overpaying, it should be closer to being paid off than initially planned. Before the visit, I texted my father, asking about the outstanding mortgage amount. He said he'd need to confirm with the loan manager. I sent a message saying, "Take me to the bank tomorrow. I need to verify the outstanding balance. While I do not want to continue paying the mortgage, I need to fully understand the situation. Given everything that has happened, I cannot justify continuing these payments. I feel that purchasing the house in the first place was already a significant contribution. It's clear that my parents and sister have taken my generosity for granted, and I have no illusions about that. I do not feel obligated to keep paying for a house that is no longer mine. It might be worth discussing this with my parents, but I need to make it clear that I cannot support property that was handed over without my consent." Then, an even more unbearable truth came to light. I just got back from the bank, and the discovery there broke my heart. The extra payments I made toward the mortgage were never credited to the bank. My father had been paying only the required mortgage amount. The excess funds were being used to pay rent for their apartment. This is the reality. It's devastating. I've been living frugally, managing within my means, and trying to pay off the mortgage early. When the bank manager showed me the monthly deposit records, I realized that I had been paying about 1.3 times the required amount. I insisted there must be a mistake. We reviewed the transaction history and saw how much I had sent my father every month. My father claimed, "The manager's records are accurate." The exact amount was paid toward the mortgage. I felt he either misunderstood or was confused, but he grabbed my arm and said, "The records are correct. You were right. We'll talk more later." His words crushed me. I felt dizzy and overwhelmed by the possibility of another betrayal. During the meeting, I sat silently as the manager explained the remaining mortgage details and options for consolidating the loan. As soon as the manager stepped away, my father pulled me aside and asked, "Why did you bring up the extra payments? Were those meant for the mortgage?" Raising my voice, I responded, "Yes, of course. Why else would I send extra money?" What he said next stunned me. I thought it was for our expenses. But I've been using it to pay the rent, he admitted. I stared at him, then sank into a chair, burying my face in my hands. How am I supposed to face my parents now? My father sat next to me and said, "It's not that big of a deal." I couldn't hide my anger. Not that big of a deal? Forcing me to buy a house, giving it to Sally without telling me, and using my extra payments for rent, none of that is a big deal. He countered. The fact is, buying the house didn't bring you any benefit. But I spent all my savings on your college education. A little payback isn't too much to ask. He continued, "With the money you sent for the house, I made the mortgage payments on time. What's the problem with using the extra money for rent? I'm not asking you for more money." I am left wondering how to respond to this betrayal and the twisted justification they are offering for their actions. I was furious at his words and argued. The extra money was meant for early repayment of the mortgage, not to cover the costs of your new apartment. I left the bank and began walking down the path. I heard my father calling my name, but I didn't look back and kept walking toward the subway station. My mother called me several times and sent a text message saying, "Come home so we can sit down and discuss this matter." I didn't reply. I no longer wanted to have a conversation with them. I decided to take the right course of action to stand against their foolishness. I was genuinely shocked at how my father was twisting the situation to make me feel burdened. I have every right to be angry, and I also have the right to set boundaries. It's crucial to make my stance clear. I am a very generous person, but it's obvious my parents have been exploiting my goodwill. In this situation, ignoring their calls and messages is entirely justified. I need to continue focusing on my own well-being. At that moment, I was trembling with anger. Later, I returned to my home and resumed my normal life. When the month changed, I did not send the mortgage payment to my father as scheduled. At the start of the month, my father tried to contact me, but he couldn't reach me as I had already blocked him. I have also blocked my mother, my sister Sally, and Sally's husband. Seeking peace, I made the decision to stop paying the mortgage. I couldn't bear being manipulated any longer. If my parents wanted to give the house to Sally, so be it. She should take over the payments. She must bear that responsibility. When my parents found out I had stopped the payments, they were furious. I received many calls and voicemails from unknown numbers. Perhaps they were using their friends' numbers, but I wasn't sure. They cried out, "If you stop paying, we can't afford the mortgage." Hearing that, I couldn't help but laugh to myself. This is no longer my problem. I blocked all those numbers as well. However, that wasn't the end of the issue. 3 days later, when I returned home from work, I found my father standing at my doorstep, furious. He yelled, "This can't end like this. You owe us. We're the ones who sent you to college. We're the ones who made you who you are today." I argued back. "I've already paid enough, haven't I? Do you even know how much money I've poured into the mortgage? It's far more than what you spent on my college tuition. I owe you nothing." My father accused me of being ungrateful, but I cut him off. "No, stop trying to guilt-trip me. I've had enough. I won't pay your rent or any other expenses anymore. That's your choice, not mine. I can't take it anymore. You treated me like a commodity, after raising me as an investment for college. Now you want to extract profits from me for life. I am not a product." With those words, I stormed down the hallway and drove away. I didn't return to my apartment. I was afraid he might follow me. I didn't want any more drama. When I snuck back later that night, he was gone. My mother called me multiple times, leaving frantic voicemails. Sally also left a lengthy message, explaining why the house was essential for her family and how selfish I was for not supporting them. But I was finally free from their manipulation. My relationship with them is over. I never imagined that after pouring so much of my hard-earned money into buying a house, it would come to this. Eventually, the house went into foreclosure. Sally struggled to keep up with the mortgage payments, and my parents were already struggling with their apartment rent. Managing the mortgage, rent, and other expenses became impossible. When I stopped paying, I foresaw this outcome. It was only a matter of time before they realized it too. About a year later, I learned that the house was put up for sale. My parents tried to use what little savings and retirement funds they had to reclaim the house, but failed. Tensions rose between Sally and my parents. Struggling with the mortgage payments, my parents asked Sally and her husband to contribute half of the costs. Sally argued that the house was a gift and insisted they should cover the full amount. It was then that my parents realized their mistake, but it was too late. They decided to let go of the house and put it up for auction. The house sold, and my father recovered a significant amount from the sale. I believe they made the right choice. As for the down payment I contributed over the years, I don't expect to get it back. They have no intention of returning it, and I have accepted that. At least now, they're no longer pretending to be generous benefactors. I have already repaid everything they spent on my education, including the interest. For this reason, I feel no guilt about cutting ties with them. According to relatives and my uncle, my parents have moved into a smaller apartment to reduce rent. They've also started saving the money they received from the house auction and are working towards supporting themselves in retirement without depending on me. They've completely stopped financially supporting Sally and have demanded that she take responsibility for her family. Although Sally tried to guilt-trip them, my parents stood firm in their decision. This was a good choice for them. I've also rented my own apartment to secure my privacy. I've started saving for a home that will truly be mine. It's never easy to distance yourself from family, but sometimes, even those who are supposed to love you most can take advantage of you. It took me time to realize this truth, but I don't regret my decision. Whether family or strangers, I believe I deserve to be treated with respect and not merely as a source of money. Hearing about the disintegration of my family is saddening, but they're finally realizing the consequences of their foolish actions.